sharing common interests also means growing together. A big part of your what you bring to the table as a businessman is your name and your reputation. In their minds and in their hearts, nobody else can steer this ship like they can.
Hi leaders, welcome to yet another episode of Access Genie, the podcast that opens the doors to the successful world of entrepreneurship. I'm your host, Ancillar Nombewu, and we're coming to you live from the Cliffside Boutique Getaway. You must check it out. The details are right below. Today, we're having such an incredible conversation that a lot of entrepreneurs around the world really struggle with. That is the marriage between entrepreneurship and your spouse, or whoever you're in a relationship with. Becomes difficult, right? I'm joined by an incredible relationship coach. You probably have heard his voice on radio, or maybe you've read his posts or whatever online. He's really active on social media. His name is Yende. Thank you so much, Linda, for joining us today.
It's an absolute pleasure. I swear, I thought you were going to say he's Uncle L.
Uncle L!
That's what everybody says.
He is Uncle L.
Yeah,
thank you so much. You know, it's been really important for me to have this conversation around relationships and entrepreneurship. And when I was reading some of your posts and watching your videos when you talk about relationships online, I realized that really people don't just change, but people get to know who they are. They become more conscious of themselves, and to us it feels like changing, but they've just became awakened to who they are. How did you grow to knowing yourself and who you are to such an extent that you can start advising other people on relationship matters?
You know, I think there's a word that you put in there, growth. A big part of evolution, a big part of whatever experience you go through in life should be growing you in some way. You know, you doing this podcast, that's growth. And at the end of this process, at the end of each episode, hopefully, there's got to be something that you've learned that you are now doing better in the next episode than you did in the previous one. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
That's growth. So for somebody to begrudge you of that growth and to have a problem with the new Ancillar who now knows how lights should be set up is problematic.
Yeah.
You know, and that's their truth. They're entitled to it. They're entitled to be bothered by it and to want you to stay in the same place. But you're not forced to stick to that. We grow on a daily basis. And if we don't, we should be worried.
Yeah.
If somebody says to me, "You've changed," I take it as a compliment. In as much as some people take it as a bad thing, I go, "Thank you." Because if you say I've changed, it means all the changes, all the growth that I'm experiencing, that I'm implementing, is actually visible. And I appreciate that. Because we are human beings. We are constantly being better versions of ourselves. We're constantly being different versions of ourselves. People shouldn't expect you to be the same person you were a year ago, 5 years ago. And it takes a very special person in your life to appreciate that and to be okay with that and to understand that you can't be the same boy or same girl that she met 15 years ago. You're a different person.
Yeah. You talk about it taking a special person to realize that. Yeah. But it's so difficult to know that this is the special person that I'm supposed to be with. How do you know that, this one special and is the one?
You say it's difficult. I think it's the easiest thing in the world. I think it takes you feeling like I can totally be myself around this person. And you go, wow. Because the reality is we often have to put on a mask. You're out there, you're on a first date, and you send your PR representative on this date, to just kind of represent who you want this person to think you are.
Yeah.
But as time goes,
and it's unsustainable.
You can't sustain it.
Yeah.
You've got to release the real you. So for you to be able to bring out the real you freely and comfortably, for you to be able to not feel the need to try and be something that you're not, that's a good place to be. That's where you want to be. And once you've found somebody that allows you to be like that, to be the real you around them, and you're not asking for permission, but it's somebody that around whom you are so free to be you. You don't need to put on any front. Yeah. You don't need to try and impress them, try to be something that you're uncomfortable with.
Yeah.
That is a good sign.
Yeah.
It's a great sign. I think we complicate these things sometimes. I've heard so many people talk about how they've been dating or they've been engaged for 7 years or 10 years because they're still not sure if this person is the one. They're not.
Because you'd know.
You would know.
Yeah.
You would really know.
Yeah.
The longer you have to wait, you just looking for a marriage of surrender. You know that point where you go, okay, well, we've been together for so long anyway, we might as well just get married. But that person was never the one. How many times have you heard people say, we're in a relationship for 7 years. We broke up, and within 3 months, he married the new person that he found.
Yeah.
With that person, he knew. With you, he didn't. And that's fine. You know, that was the time and place. That's where you were. But if you were hoping for marriage, then it's not fine. You know, some people are okay with not being married, and that's fine. That's their choice. But just know that you shouldn't be sitting there and holding on and hoping and, you know, thinking somewhere along the way it'll eventually get to that point. It never does.
It never does. And it's interesting when you talk about just knowing. I met my husband when we were both first year in university at the University of Johannesburg. And I remember when I knew that this man is going to be my husband. I was young at the time. I was 18 or so. And I remember praying in his apartment at Labori, and I'm like, God, show me the sign. Tell me that he's the one. And for the first time ever in my life, I spoke in tongues. I've never done it before. I come from a Seventh-day Adventist background. We don't speak in tongues in my church. So for me, it was such an outer body experience, and I had chills all over my body. I remember him coming in and trying to stop me because he didn't understand, like, what's going on with you? And I couldn't stop myself, and I was just going on and on. I didn't know what I was saying, but everything felt supernatural, if I'm to use that word. It was like such an outer body experience, and I was like, okay, this is the sign I was looking for, and this person is the one. And that, coupled with how he treated me and continues to treat me, and how he values me in his space, was important. However, one of the reasons I wanted to have you on the podcast is just having this understanding of people changing and how marriages and entrepreneurship work together. When we met, we were at university, so no obligations, we're just students. And then we both went into the space of work. He went and did his work in tech, and then I went into work as a journalist. However, through my journey as a journalist, I discovered my passion for entrepreneurship, and then I became an entrepreneur. So somebody would say, I grew. I would say I became who I already was just at the right time, because then I was younger. I had to meet certain people and understand certain things about business. Then I became an entrepreneur. But you'd ask somebody else and they'll say, oh, Ancillar changed, because who I was when I was employed as a journalist and who I am now are two very different people. Got less time to do anything with anybody, even for friends and family. So last week I asked my husband what it feels like being married to an entrepreneur. And his answer was, it's painful. He said, it's painful. And I was triggered and surprised at the same time, because I was like, how can it be painful? I'm such a perfect wife. I cook, I do this. I'm like, we have such open lines of communication. It should be amazing being married to me. It's like, being married to you, I love, but being married to an entrepreneur is painful because of how busy you are, and laptop always on your lap or your phone. And I can't really come in between that, because I understand that's something that's driving you. So I have to support you. But then on the relationship front, sometimes it feels painful because we go on vacation. He's taken me to secluded spaces where there's no Wi-Fi. And I wake up in the morning to drive out on the highway to go find Wi-Fi to send emails, right? So how do entrepreneurs like myself balance marriages? Because it's not a good thing for a spouse to feel pain with their partner.
Yeah. I think, first of all, you should be grateful that he was willing to tell you that. Speak his truth. Speak honestly about how it makes him feel. Look, there's a lot of compromise that's required once you become an entrepreneur. It's a very different ball game altogether. When you're an employee, he knows, you know, that you clock in at 9 o'clock and you clock out at 5 o'clock. You get your salary at the end of the month and everybody's happy. But here you are trying to be a bigger and better version of yourself. It's almost like you've taken up going to the gym. He has to understand that means you now leave the house at 5 in the morning and not at 9, because you're on a journey to self-improvement. And he needs to understand that you're going to go to the gym in the afternoon. And sometimes you're going to do push-ups in the living room. Do you know what I'm saying? You are working on personal growth. You're working on building something that means a lot to you. There's compromise there. However, you also then have to have a certain level of compromise. And that is being very intentional about your time with him as well. To the point where you're able to say, you know what, this is our time and strictly our time. I'm not going to go and chase after Wi-Fi. Look, if you want to go chase after Wi-Fi while he's taking a nap or something like that, not a train smash, but you shouldn't be getting to the point where it becomes disruptive of your family life so much that your family life becomes non-existent. One of the best periods of my life was a time when my wife and I were both working together on the same venture. Because then that was a shared passion. That meant I understood, she understood, we were very much on the same page. That's easier. But the moment you are on divergent paths, he's going this way, you're going that way, sometimes it really, in fact, often it feels painful because he doesn't share your passion for what you're doing. every minute that's given to the business is being taken from him. We're still at home. So my suggestion, even with the home situation, is you really do need to have a no compromise hour or 2 hours or whatever it is, you decide. No compromise 2 hours where you are giving him undivided attention and you forget about the phone, you forget about the laptop. And there needs to be a day that is dedicated strictly to saying, you know what, this is our time and our time alone. Everything else, the compromise needs to unfortunately come from his side. But you are now meeting him halfway because you're saying, this, our time, your time, and nothing else.
Yeah. And the time factor of it also sometimes can become ambiguous, right? So a lot of couples spend quality time watching, for example, television.
Sure.
And as I was preparing for this conversation, I looked at the kinds of time in my home that we'll spend together. And I was like, I just want to look at the times when we spend television and when we do other things. And I realized that if we watch our favorite show, for example, Survivor, we aren't growing as a couple.
Sure.
It's just something that we're sitting doing together, but the relationship in itself is not growing compared to when we go and try something new that neither of us has ever tried before.
Sure.
Then I find that I feel the growth. I see it when we do those sort of kinds of activities. So this quality time issue also becomes a factor. It's because what's quality and what are you doing in that time or the 2 hours or the day that you talk about to ensure that the relationship is actually growing?
You know, it's actually quite interesting that I think at some point I used to think like you in this matter. But I also realized that sharing common interests also means growing together. So even a simple thing like Survivor, just to be able to say, oh my gosh, I can't believe he did that, or whatever. You sitting there, you enjoy the show together, right? Yes, it's not, you're not sitting there and having a conversation about yourselves as a couple and whatever. But that doesn't make it a bad thing either. If you're able to watch something together, it's no different to you going cycling together, when you think about it. It's no different to you going, it's an activity that you are both doing and both enjoying at that moment. Not always a bad thing.
Maybe let's define what
especially
growth
if you
means.
both like it. Okay, but
what growth means within a relationship.
But this is not growth.
Okay.
What we're talking about.
All right.
What we're talking about here is just an activity that brings you closer because you both enjoy it. It's a bonding activity.
Okay.
Similar to guys watching a soccer game together because they enjoy soccer. My wife never used to like Formula One, for example. And then Drive to Survive came along and we started watching Formula One. I look forward to those Sunday afternoons. I actually found that I don't enjoy watching a Formula One race without her anymore because it's a bonding experience. So do not despise those bonding experiences. It's something that you enjoy together. And Formula One will never be the same for me ever again without her. So it's not wasted and it's not a lost activity. That watching Survivor, I would never watch Survivor, but she loves it, and when she watches it, I can see her. Those moments where what do you call it, tribal council and all of that, and there's all these things, and that's become a bonding experience all on its own because you now have a common interest, an additional common interest that never even existed I can never watch. There's so many things that I can't watch now that I probably used to watch by myself. But now I have to watch it with her because she enjoys it as much as I do. And I love watching her reaction, and I love sharing my reaction to something. And that's become a bonding experience all on its own. Don't despise it.
Okay. So I love that you differentiate between bonding and growth.
Yes.
Because those will be really different things, because I come from the school of thought that if you don't actively, intentionally work on growth, then that's when you'll find separation, and you wake up 20 years later and you're like, where are we? What are we doing? Yeah. And you're just strangers in the same home.
Sure. So yes, there's bonding and there's growth. All I'm saying is, do not think that the bonding moments are negative. Because sometimes I've heard a lot of people say, oh, but we're just watching TV and we're not talking and we're not. That's still a bonding experience, and it's still something that's great for you as a couple. But
it's not enough on its own.
It's not enough on its own.
Yeah.
You're correct. And that's why you need to have those the dates. The dates, for example. Just go out, have a meal together, have a conversation. Phones down, no external interruptions. Even at home, there needs to be that time that's separate from the phone time, where you're able to just connect. Say, how was your day? How are things going? With your business, whatever the case might be. I've often found that a lot of people feel uncomfortable with their partners wanting to know how things are going with their work and with their whatever. I think it's because they feel it's a bit of an interrogation rather than a conversation.
And that's already a problem.
Yeah,
if you feel like your partner wanting to know about your life, because you still have separate lives, even if you're married to somebody, is an interrogation. There's like deeper issues. I suppose your coaches maybe could even trace it from childhood sometimes, or growth, or whatever traumas that other people have in past relationships.
Yeah. What I've often found is, if somebody has, there's a lot of people who have been in relationships with people who have absolutely no interest in their lives and what they do. And the only time they start asking the questions is when they have some kind of suspicion. So in that, you then start having this feeling that when I get asked questions, it's because she has a suspicion. When I start getting asked these questions, it's because there's something she's heard. There's something she's uncomfortable with. There's something she's probing. So you're already on the back foot. You are already thinking anything you say can and will be used against you in the court of love. So, you sit there and you are always concerned. Why is she asking? What have you heard? What did you see? What are you suspecting? What are you thinking? And it doesn't mean that it's because there's anything that he's hiding, but just because of past experiences where the questions always seem to signify a negative thing rather than genuine interest.
Yeah. And for entrepreneurs, I suppose those questions sometimes can get heightened where you're in a relationship, maybe there's no trust or just a basic foundation of understanding. Because as an entrepreneur, there's a lot of early mornings, late nights, travel, you're bidding for this and bidding for that, and so many meetings that sometimes your relationship could feel like there's a third party in it. And the business in itself is the third party within the relationship. So how do entrepreneurs, first of all, create spaces of comfort, especially for their spouses, in such a relationship where you know that there is a third party and you can't run away from it, because as a startup, it is your third party. You need to feed your family. The income is important for the home until you get to a certain level of revenue within that business.
And let's not forget that other bit. You are passionate about this. See, passion just takes over. It takes over. Like when you're passionate about something, you could do it for 12 hours nonstop and not even be aware that 12 hours has lapsed. And that is at sometimes makes you then forget about your partner, because you're so focused on what you're doing. You are here, you are gung-ho, you trying to make things happen, you're excited about it, and you forget to check in. And you forget to just say, hey, listen, I'm having a great day, but I'm good. Don't worry about me, but I am thinking about you. So the third party, you always have to ask yourself, third party at what expense? And that requires you to be mindful. It requires you to always remember. Even the simplest things, when you leave home and you're going to an appointment, to just pop a text to say, you know what, made it here safely. Because she's probably sitting there wondering, oh my gosh, he's on the road. Bad things happen on the road.
I always think my husband is dead.
There we go.
If he lives and he doesn't test, I'm like, oh my goodness, what has happened to him?
There we go. But so easily, he could get there, and as he's walking in, the person that he's meeting is right there as well. And hey, how you doing? The conversation has started with them. And it would be so rude of him, he feels, to just say, please give me a second, let me just send this text. The conversation has started. Before you know it, 3 hours have gone by into that conversation, and he hasn't checked in with you to let you know that he's okay. You are sitting there stressed out of your mind. So it really requires you to be intentional, to be mindful, to sit there and say, you know what, I must remember to
do that,
to check in.
Yeah.
I must remember to let her know. And it's a work in progress. I don't think anybody can ever perfect that to a T and be brilliant at it. But it does require for you to just kind of constantly have that in your mind. I think it's actually quite a funny thing when you think about it, because at first there's just you. At first it's just you, and you are accountable to only you. You are, the only person that you owe any explanation to or any accountability to is you. And then somebody comes into your life. Now you have to start thinking for two. You are thinking for two. You have to always remember the impact of what you are doing to her, because you're sharing a life together. And then along comes number 3, the business. Now you have to start thinking about everything that you do, impact on A, B, and C. And you have to keep trying to balance those 3. It's a process, and it's not an easy transition to make for any of the parties.
Yeah.
But you both as a couple need to constantly be reminding one another. You both as a couple need to constantly remember not to take it personally. You say, you know what, I'm gonna remind you, and I'm gonna keep reminding you. Hey, listen, you didn't touch base. Hey, listen, whatever the case might be.
And you know what a lot of therapists always say when people go to marriage counseling is advise couples to say, this makes me feel a certain way.
Yeah.
So if couples, for example, with us, when we try to self-counsel, it's been important because I always have that fear that something bad has happened to him. So I had to make it clear, because we have that clear communication space.
Sure.
The same way you can tell me it's painful to be with an entrepreneur. I was able to say to him, listen, you not texting when you get to your destination makes me panic, and then I stop being productive, because now I'm worried that maybe something happened to you. So you have to stop putting me in that space of anxiety. It might be a me problem, maybe because of my own issues, because when we talk about it, like, oh, maybe it's because my father left when I was a kid, so I always have this thing at the back of my mind that maybe male figures would leave. I don't know. But we ended up getting to a space where we say, no matter what trauma or whatever thing is there, what you need to know is that when you don't communicate, that's what I think, and then it puts me in a space of anxiety. So I think vulnerability within relationships is also really important, because sometimes we mask our feelings, and then that's when you wake up one day and your marriage is dead, because you're building so much resentment with your spouse because of what they're not giving to you, but they don't know they should be giving that to you, or that's what you want them to give to you.
Yeah. When you A, I feel B. The moment you use that phrase, like you say, you then make yourself vulnerable, because now you expose your feelings. But in the process, the person does not feel attacked anymore, because now they understand that what I'm doing carries consequences in how it makes you feel. So yes, that phrase is so, so crucial. Instead of saying, you must stop doing ABC, or you do ABC, that's a personal attack. But when you A, I feel B, you are now saying, these are the consequences of those actions. Whenever you don't communicate, I feel anxious. I worry. Then they understand the reason why you are asking them to constantly do certain things, why it is that you insist on them doing it. It requires vulnerability from you. It requires introspection from you. We sometimes have an approach in relationship that's almost like a parent. That, because I say so, isn't what just me saying so enough for you to do it? No, it's not, because I'm a grown-up. And it helps for you to give me your thought process and give me your logic, why it is that you want me to do this. And once you've opened up like that, it gives me a very different perspective. So both of us, both of you in that situation need to do some
work.
Some work.
Definitely. And in the space of entrepreneurship, sometimes our businesses, or even just careers, become our identity. And that's really how we're raised, right? When you're growing up, they say, what do you want to be? Not who are you or who do you want to be? It's like, what do you want to be? Want to be a police officer? You want to be a nurse? You want to be a journalist? Whatever it is, rather than who do you want to be? So much that even when you become an entrepreneur, for a lot of entrepreneurs, their identities are linked to the businesses and the stuff that they do. So much that sometimes we've seen so many a time founders getting into scandals and their stock prices for their businesses going down, etc., because of the personality and what's happening in that person's private life. Then it becomes your identity. And your spouse is now tied not only to you, but the identity of your business as well. You're now so and so, this wife to the CEO of. Now that person's identity is also tied to it. How do we unlearn and get to a place of realizing that there can be a separation between entrepreneurship and family?
Can they though? In the bigger scheme of things. Let me tell you why I'm asking this. Yes, we'd like to believe that there can be a separation. But the reality is a big part of your what you bring to the table as a businessman is your name and your reputation. That's a fact. There's certain people who will buy into a business idea because of the name and the person that's behind it. A business's reputation will be linked to whoever is at the helm. There's no doubt about it.
But it's possible also to unlink it, right? There's so many examples that we can look at where you don't even know who the founder is or what they're doing. I'll give YouCook as an example. I know it's an incredible meal kit company. And when I Google, I see the names. I don't know how they look like. I don't know if they're married or not, or if they're single or not. It just depends on the strategy towards building that particular venture where you can have separation. At the beginning, maybe the first year or so, obviously to be linked to you because you're trying to do some marketing, but then you can also unlink it to your person so that it becomes its own identity. The same way Coca-Cola and all those big brands have their own identities outside of the founders who are not even with us anymore.
Yeah, look, I mean, I think the point though is this: it depends on the stage of development of the business. Pemberton was directly linked with Coca-Cola in the first 5 years or 10 years of the brand and of the product. But somewhere along the way, perhaps it then becomes there is that separation where Coca-Cola has its life as a brand, and Pemberton is just a guy. But Colonel Sanders is still KFC to this day. He never got to achieve a separation. Steve Jobs is still Apple, despite the fact that he has passed on. And if anything comes out right now about Steve Jobs' life, even though he passed on years ago, it'll have an impact on the brand still. So it depends on whether you at some point manage to actually separate. Some people become larger than life and they become the brand. Some people develop this I think here's a nice example. Warren Buffett is not tied to anything, if truth be told. There's not a single company that would really struggle if a Warren Buffett scandal came out, hypothetically. Not really. There isn't a single company that's dependent on the Warren Buffett name. But if Jeff Bezos is one company. That's one company, that's one brand. So I think it does depend on whether you're at some point willing to relinquish a part of your power and part of your link to the brand, and just be the guy that's in the background. I've got my CEO. I've got a whole entire company that's running. It is hard. I guess that's where I'm going with this. Yeah. It's very hard to relinquish that power.
Mm-hmm. I think one of the common themes during this conversation now so far has been intentionality, right? So yeah. I suppose when entrepreneurs build their businesses with that intention to begin with, then they're able to build a strategy that allows them to do that. Mm. Then even the way in which they tell the stories of the business is not really about stories about themselves. It becomes stories about the business and what the business is trying to achieve and what the business is doing. Then it changes conversation to be able to sort of separate yourself a little bit from the business. Because I think that little bit of separation, when you know that there's you and there's the business, it can really help in the relationship on the home front, because you're already training your mind to understand that these are two separate entities that play different roles within your life at different stages within your life, right? And entrepreneurs, apparently, 43% to 48% of entrepreneurs' marriages end in divorce. That's very high.
That is high.
End in divorce.
Sure.
Again, because of the pressures and struggles that come with entrepreneurship and the time that is required. One of my friends always says to me, Ancillar, I want you to be a businesswoman and not an entrepreneur, because she sees them as like really two different spaces where business people are really just concerned about profit, and entrepreneurship, in my perspective, has a little bit of social a social link to it, especially in the context of Africa, because you can't really do anything without taking care of the society, because Ubuntu, right, over just business. How do we help entrepreneurs not become part of the statistic of 43 to 48% of divorcees in the country?
Entrepreneurs love their business. They personalized it. It's not numbers, like you say. It's not numbers. This is something that an entrepreneur takes nothing and turns it into something. And as a result, that becomes their baby. That becomes their, we really do give it a personality, and we give it a, human qualities. And that's where the problem is. Because if I have a baby, if I have a child, I expect my wife to love my child as much as I do, which is kind of natural, it's normal. And I take it as an affront if she doesn't. So you're right. At some point, you've got to turn into a businessman. And that means literally being intentional about letting go. Let go, bring in capable people who can gradually take over. And it's a bit of a blow to the ego, it's a bit of a blow to the, to be letting go of this baby of yours. Because you have a vision from day one as an entrepreneur. You know exactly where you want it to go. You know exactly what you want to see happening. So to let go of that means letting somebody else start steering it towards a certain direction. So yes, being intentional about it is crucial. You have to just know it from the get-go, think it from the get-go, to say at some point I'm going to have to let go. Interestingly, it's the same thing that you do with your child. That, at some point they have to grow their wings, and they'll be bigger than me. They'll have a life outside of me. And I've got to learn to let go. And I've got to prepare to let go now for the future.
Yeah. That sentiment is actually reminding me of a conversation I had with Christo Wiese, founder of Steinhoff, Pick and Pay, Pepco, Shoprite Group, etc. And I had a conversation with him, and I was asking him, how many companies he's had in his lifetime. And he said to me, I can't keep count, because I realized that for me to be able to have a life I enjoy, I have to start something, spend 2, 3, 4 years with it, and then I have to give it up. I can still be a majority shareholder and still earn money and dividends, etc. from it. However, I need to let go and let it become itself. But then I quickly get bored and I want to start something that then allows him time in his life to take sabbaticals, to be with his grandchildren, his family,
Yes.
and build, because he's told himself, I'm going to start something and I'm 3 years. This is my dedication, and everyone in my life understands that.
Yeah.
And I've got 2 years plus of just earning, and I can do nothing and just focus on my family and then start something new. So that's like a really interesting way of doing it.
Yeah.
I think
Yeah.
that he's done with that.
Begin with the end in sight.
Yes. 7 Habits of Highly Effective
Yep.
People. Love it.
Yeah. Because all that happens is, as an entrepreneur, it never ends. It never ends. You know, I think that's what makes it that much more difficult. You sit there and you go, I can't believe this is what the rest of my life is going to look like. Because as things stand, that's what it is. There's only so much of this you can take. Excuse me. But if you, like Christovisa says, if you already know from the get-go, this is going to be 3 years of hard like slog. For these 3 years, we're going to have to make some sacrifices. You're going to have to understand the late nights and early mornings and the this and the that, and me being away for this long and whatever. But there is an ending to it. There's an end goal. In 3 years' time, I'm back, and I will give you unlimited time.
True.
It's so much easier to stomach that.
Even as a spouse at home,
As a
you're like,
spouse,
okay,
yeah.
let's do it. We're going to
Yeah.
push.
Yes.
We've got 2 years to push,
You're
and
very
then we've got
supportive.
our time.
Yeah.
It's
You
easier
can
to
support that, yeah, with so much ease.
Yeah.
So much ease. And this is the reason why a lot of people struggle to eventually remove themselves from the situation, because they get too attached. They get too attached. It's like, in their minds and in their hearts, nobody else can steer this ship like they can.
And
like
it's
they do.
untrue.
It's never true.
Not
You're not superhuman. You're not. Apple has done just fine without Steve Jobs. He's gone. Never took any time out. That guy would live at Cupertino. He'd be there at the HQ for sometimes for days on end, without even going home.
And the quality of life is then impacted. When you mentioned that, I get reminded of the Elon Musk interviews that I watching up about how hard he works and the amount of hours he puts in.
Yeah.
Then it brings a question around the impact of entrepreneurship to the quality of life of the entrepreneur. So much that I had to sort of question it for myself and change my perspective. Had you asked me a year ago even what kind of impact I want to have in the world, it was going to be very huge. I want to employ 3,000 people by the time I'm 40. I want to do this. I want to leave my footprints on the sands of time. Still true. However, now my number one answer is I want to live a happy life. I want to be happy.
Man.
That is my goal, to be happy. And everything else is secondary from my happiness. So sometimes as entrepreneurs, we grind so hard for this legacy that we want to create and this impact that we want to have in the world, forgetting that this is the only body we have and the only life we have.
And the only time that we have. Your loved ones will just as much remember the happy times, the laughter, the how you made them feel, the things you used to do together, the this, the that. That is legacy all on its own. Look, it's great to not be suffering through life because, there was your parents left you a will and not bills. That's great. It's fantastic. But some people take that and take it to that other level where there's just never enough. There's never enough. They want to keep on. 10 million is not enough. 100 million is not enough. I want to leave you 1 billion because I want to leave you money that will last for generations. But you're a total stranger. Your kids don't know you. They have no clue who you are. They've not spent any time with you. That's crucial.
It's very crucial. And definitely to everybody watching, make sure that you get the book by Linda Yende. It's called Wake Up Woman. We're going to put some links just below so that you can know more about Linda and the book itself. Thank you so much, Linda, for coming. Really appreciate it.
Always a pleasure.
From the Cliffside Boutique Getaway, this podcast is for all entrepreneurs, leaders, and genies who are looking to learn from those who walked the path to success. Thank you so much for your support and stay tuned to more Access Genie. New episodes drop every Monday on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and of course on YouTube. Follow us on social media and share this podcast with your friends and your family so they too can be empowered. I hope you're leaving with a newfound source of energy to go after that life that you want. Good luck.